Now, when it comes to Drake, listen, I've got a lot to say about the chaos his new Iceman track has stirred up. If you're ready to unpack what might be one of the most confusing drops of 2026, go ahead and like, hype, and subscribe, because once the OVO loyalists realize we're dissecting what they're calling the not like us response, it's gonna get loud. And trust me, you won't want to miss how strange this rollout becomes. No, it was for this so-called Iceman era. In a rap landscape where artists are dropping strong projects and moving serious numbers, Drake feels like he's scrambling to stay in the spotlight. There was a time when any gimmick he tried, good or bad, kept his name buzzing, but that safety net doesn't feel as strong anymore. Right now, his main play seems to be teasing snippets where the attraction isn't even the music, it's the anticipation of another jab at Kendrick Lamar and a response to Not Like Us. He frames it as the industry turned on him, like betrayal is the reason for the slump people keep pointing out. The full leak, floating around under titles like Sizing Me Up or Spicy Hot, though nothing's confirmed, has his fanbase treating it like a heavyweight rebuttal. They've crowned it the big moment. So as we look at the lyrics being hyped as his massive comeback statement, I'll spare you from having to sit through the drawn-out delivery yourself, because the tone alone is a lot. His supporters say the record captures everything OVO's been dealing with and doubles down on that October's very own loyalty. But when you actually press play, the opening bars don't exactly inspire confidence. Lines about putting bread on the case land flat, and it only gets more awkward from there. Then comes the part fans keep quoting. Talk about Drake and you get a whole lot. Talk about Drake and you get some streams. Talk about Drake and you get some guap. You caught a 50 right in your face. We heard nobody drop. That's not how we rock. That's just verse 1, and already you can see why the reactions are so split. And you know what? This right here is painfully bad. This is next level cringe, and honestly, it's flat out embarrassing, especially when you watch the hardcore Drake stans hype it up and treat it like gospel, to the point where I'm low-key ashamed to even read these bars out loud. I'm genuinely stuck, and I might just cut the sentence short because what more is there to say? Alright, we're back. Go ahead and tap that like button for surviving that with me. We made it through that part, and now we've got to push through the rest of this disaster of a track. But when you really sit with these lyrics that orbit around Drake, the benefits of beefing with him, and the supposed perks that come with it, you start to see the play. If I'm being completely objective, he might need to shelve the entire Iceman project. And not just because the songs feel lifeless, the rollout has zero momentum, and the hype is not existent, but because the only consistent character trait this album is revealing is Drake playing the ultimate gaslighter. So let's slow this down for a second. Look closely at how he's attempting to rewrite the narrative around his career slump and the setbacks he's taken over the last 2 years.
Whether people want to admit it or not, we're seeing in real time how short the memory span is in hip-hop media and fandom. This could actually land with a chunk of listeners, which makes you wonder if the one thing Kendrick Lamar might have miscalculated in the battle was that "not like us" line about how Drake treats his audience. Because at the end of the day, fan or not, the fact that people are still riding for him and defending what sounds like recycled audio chaos says a lot about how deeply they've invested in the image he's built and his refusal to face reality. I mean, it's wild. You could even argue that this loyal backing is exactly why he felt confident enough to drop the full version of that snippet we heard months ago and test the temperature again. And let's be real, this track is probably locked in for Iceman, because Drake loves previewing snippets to gauge reactions so he doesn't get flamed for another flop, and clearly he believes this one has enough fan armor to survive. And that's the craziest part, because this record feels like a masterclass in dodging accountability and sidestepping every ounce of responsibility for his own decline. Instead of just admitting he took the L in that one-on-one with Kendrick, he's turning it into a spectacle, a numbers game, a clout strategy. And honestly, it's hard to watch, so brace yourself. I almost need to pause again because this is exhausting. And somehow that was only verse 1. Now we step into verse 2 and listen to this, it gets even messier. After spending an entire first verse denying reality and refusing to acknowledge how his career has shifted, he doubles down instead of recalibrating. So what does he do next? He pivots into Jimmy Brooks mode, throws on the tough guy costume, and tries to sound menacing in the most awkward, over-the-top way possible. And yes, we have to break down more lyrics. How are you going to testify just to sit in a box? Which is wild coming from someone throwing courtroom jabs and calling somebody Karen-coded. Then he questions loyalty, saying either you never showed up for your people or they conveniently forgot. He talks about extending grace for years and now deciding it's over. Then he says something else needs to end, the comparisons about money. He flexes wealth, downplays other people's homes, and references Ferraris at 100 apiece. And he caps it off by bragging about selling out the Superdome solo with only his newest drops in rotation. And while most of that feels like filler bravado and surface-level flexing, because let's be honest, it does, there's one specific line at the very end that actually matters. And hold up, it reads like a clear, calculated response aimed directly at Kendrick Lamar. Now listen, I actually find this part hilarious, because when Drake says he sold out the Superdome by himself, playing only the new drops, hold up, do you remember where the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show happened? It was at the Caesars Superdome in New Orleans, the same stage where Kendrick Lamar delivered a halftime performance people are still talking about. So the subtext isn't subtle at all. After months of releases, countless opportunities to address the battle, and an entire Super Bowl cycle coming and going, Drake never once stepped up to seriously angle for that moment or bring those words to life on that stage. Instead, he's been tucked away somewhere, and now he's claiming he could headline the Super Bowl and pack a stadium off the strength of the SSS for You records and Iceman alone. Which, girl, let's be serious. There are layers of cap in that statement. When the newer songs aren't landing and the buzz isn't translating, that's exactly why the venues shrink from stadium talk to arena runs. Stop the spin. Because while Kendrick has already proven he can command stadium crowds and that hip-hop absolutely belongs on that level, Drake hasn't even delivered the album he promised. And that's why we're still dissecting Iceman snippets 7 months after the announcement and that first livestream episode, which is honestly wild when you think about it. This rollout has stretched into a 7-month saga just since the lead single dropped, and that doesn't scream genius strategy or cultural chess move, it screams chaos, which explains why we haven't gotten a new record since September 2025.
And now we reach the final crash out. If verse 1 felt like narrative gymnastics and verse 2 felt like cosplay tough talk, this last stretch is a full-blown spiral. I don't even have a category for it, but let's read it anyway. Wish me luck. He talks about spicing it up, says these little punks are winding him up like they forgot when times were rough and nobody was kinder than him. Then he claims he carried most of them across America, that Drizzy was the one boosting them up. He calls himself the biggest around and says these boys need a chair just to size him up. What? That's clearly aimed at Kendrick. But pause. Don't let the ego inflate too fast. Remember, this is the same artist some corners of the rap world label a top-tier lyricist and even argue out-rapped Kendrick in the beef. Then he keeps going, telling someone to look in the mirror while bragging that he looks like a whole lot of bread and needs more. And you know what? That's enough. You get the picture. Because when you're operating in an art form built on precision, wordplay, and elite penmanship, repeating, "Don't make me hot, don't make me hot, don't make me get a big head," over and over, doesn't exactly scream master MC energy. It sounds like unraveling. And if you didn't catch it the first 10 times, he literally says he's crashing out and doesn't care anymore. That's not dominance, that's meltdown mode. And for most people watching this in real time, it doesn't feel like a victory lap, it feels like a musical train wreck. I mean, it's obvious, but for the die-hard Drake loyalists, it also makes sense why they're hyping this up inside their bubble. When Drake calls himself the #1 guy, throws jabs at Kendrick Lamar over the Super Bowl, revisits the beef, and checks off every so-called downfall talking point, he's at least presenting it like he's steering the ship and delivering a calculated message. Even in that last verse, shrinking Kendrick down, trying to flip the history and claim he was always the one uplifting him, there are angles in there that, if you squint hard enough, you could convince yourself are believable. You wouldn't have to be grounded in reality to buy it though. And at this stage, that suspension of disbelief almost feels like the entry fee to being a Drake fan in 2026. So yes, some people will read the lyrics on paper, see the disses, and call it fire, even though sonically it falls apart the second you press play. The problem for Drake is that rap isn't a solo sport. It's competitive, it's comparative, and we've all watched how this played out against the field once the narrative slipped out of his control. Drake, be serious. We saw what happened, and none of these bars magically rewrite it. It feels manufactured, it feels scripted. Whether it came from his own notepad or a writing session with collaborators, it plays like a fantasy version of events instead of something rooted in what actually happened. Most listeners can hear that. But if this is the tone he's bringing into Iceman, full gaslight mode, then buckle up, because this rollout could become exhausting fast. If the entire project leans into narrative manipulation and chest-puffing denial, expect a lot more moments just like this, and that could make the rap landscape way more chaotic than it's been in a minute. Now, with all that said, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this Drake record? What's your take on the surrounding drama and the current state of his career, and Iceman as a whole? We've already talked about Baby Keem lining up a February 20 release, and the rumor mill says Drake might try to drop around it or step on the moment. That alone is adding more tension to the timeline. So where do you see this going? Does Drake circle back into competition mode with Kendrick and Keem again, or pivot entirely? Does he delay the album even longer or finally drop a full single instead of living in snippet preview territory? If you made it this far, I appreciate you for real. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, and show love. Have an incredible day and an even better weekend. And if you want more context, stick around, because earlier we broke down a Kendrick and Baby Keem track that slowly revealed itself as a subliminal Drake diss over time. When you connect those dots, it starts to look less like coincidence and more like a blueprint for where their next era could be heading. There are serious clues about Keem's upcoming album, Kendrick's next chapter, and the direction this entire landscape might take from here.